Joining me now is Shevrin Jones. He is running for Florida Senate District 35, so to be the senator from there, and he's got a unique story, but he's also currently in the House of Representatives. So Shevrin, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. So you're term limited out of the House now, right?
Yes.
So okay, and is your district Republican or Democrat?
So my district is a high percentage Democrat, over 85%.
Yeah, I would say that's a high percentage. Okay, I've done the math on that. We crunched the numbers back here at Rebel headquarters. That's a high percentage. Okay, so
yes.
But you're not running against the Democratic incumbent, right? The Democratic incumbent is also term limited out?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so largely the Democratic primary will decide who is the new state senator from the 35th district, it looks like.
That's correct.
Okay,
that's
gotcha.
Correct.
All right, and so let's talk about why you're running for the Senate, and we'll talk about how your candidacy might be historic. So that's interesting. But first, what makes you want to run for the Senate?
Well, first of all, I appreciate this conversation. Looking at the work that we have done the past 8 years in the Florida House, making sure that women who are incarcerated have access to feminine hygiene products, or passing legislation to ensure that we stop the spread of HIV and hepatitis C by passing the Infectious Disease Elimination Act, which is also known as needle exchange, is putting forth legislation like that is geared directly towards people, is what some of the work that we want to continue. Not to exclude the fact that in my freshman year, we passed police body cameras to go statewide, because the district in which I represent is predominantly African American district. And I made a promise to myself and to my constituents when I first ran that when I run, that I want to make sure while sitting at the table, that I have an opportunity to give you all what I know it is that you want. And that's what we've been able to do. And that's what we want to be able to continue. And that is putting legislation that benefits people, not industry.
So Shevrin, you got those bills passed, even though the House in Florida is significantly Republican. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's important to point out that in a Republican-ran legislature, it is extremely clear that we must put forth the story of our districts for individuals of why they support those particular issues. And I made it my business to make sure that I do that. As I walk the halls, I might have to do more work than my Republican colleagues have to do, but I've never been afraid of work. Walking the halls to get all members to join the bandwagon, and why I'm supporting a particular piece of legislation is important. And so, if that's what we have to continue to do, I will continue to do that to make sure that people feel represented, and we will continue to do that even in the Senate.
So Shevrin, if you win, you would be the first openly gay senator in Florida history. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Now,
yes.
In Florida, you have to clarify openly gay senator, but but that is quite amazing that there hasn't been any in the state of Florida in its entire history. I'm kind of blown away by that.
Well, you know what? I'll say this: that it's interesting to understand that Florida, we're very weird in a lot of areas, but I do know that our state is changing daily, especially when our country is changing. Let me just not say state is changing. The country is changing. As the country changes, I believe people are more interested in electing individuals who are going to be concerned about their needs. I got asked a question last week: how does it feel to be the first openly black gay legislator? And I said to them, it didn't change since I was 3 years old. I've been just fine since then. I'll be honest with you that my biggest support, my biggest thing has been ensuring that I represent people regardless of what my lifestyle is. It has nothing to do with ensuring that people's everyday life is being represented in Tallahassee. And I think that's the most important thing.
Although you did have this one sentence where you said, I went into the House of Representatives married and I came out gay. So What happened, Shevrin?
so listen. I think it's important to know that my dad is a very well-known pastor here in South Florida. He's a pastor of a very large congregation, and yeah, I was big on following the rules of our household, and it got to a point to where I no longer wanted to lie to my wife. I no longer wanted to lie to my family, and I believe that my being honest with myself and others could help somebody else, and it actually did. And it's been great to share the story. Although my story is interesting because there's some things that happened prior to me coming out, but I think it's important to know that all of that has made me to who I am today, and I share all the details with individuals so they can know that it's okay. Share your story because you might just help someone else.
Yeah. So now let's talk about other policies that you've been in the news for. So you got into quite a back and forth on the issue of guns, and obviously in Florida that's an enormous issue, as it is across the country. But there you had, of course, the Parkland shooting, and then you guys had a debate after that. But you also had, Trayvon Martin. It's Florida. You've had a billion shootings, all controversial, right? But
Right.
now the Republicans wanted to put guns into the schools, and they did. So why were you opposed to that?
Well, for all the reasons that you just said prior to leading into the question. Florida has a history. We have a history of stand your ground. We have a history of being a gun state. We have a history of totally deflecting away from the issues when it comes to even having a conversation about guns. I'll be honest with you. That moment on the floor was not one that I was expecting, but it was one that I was glad that happened. And it also goes to tell everyone why it's important to have diversity within our legislature. I mean, Florida, we have not been honest with ourselves when it comes to how Black and brown individuals are treated at the hands of police, and the problems that we're having when it comes to stand your ground. That's why we ask for, if you're going to arm teachers, don't just take teachers through diversity training. Make sure that teachers go through implicit bias training. It was a simple ask. It was an ask that my colleagues, even on the other side of the aisle, 9 of them agreed with me on it, and they got reprimanded for it. But it was important for us to bring it up. When I go back home, that plus 80% of African American and Hispanic constituency that I represent, they want to know that my child, when he or she go into the classroom, that I fought for them, in particular with issues such as putting guns in the hands of teachers, which teachers didn't sign up for that. Teachers signed up to teach children, and to take a Florida who is at the bottom of the totem pole and how we pay teachers and our education system. We should be putting forth policies that's going to improve our education system and policies that's going to ensure our teachers stay within the classroom, not promoting guns. All we're doing is putting forth an agenda that's being asked by someone else.
So studies have shown that unfortunately, most people in this country find African Americans to be more dangerous in situations where they might encounter them in some sort of police situation. Now, I hesitate in saying that because now we're arming people inside the school, so it shouldn't be a normal policing situation. Right. But now that's the role that the teachers have foisted upon them in the state of Florida, and so. All the studies show that in those simulations, African Americans get shot more often, et cetera. And I think it's on average, African American kids are seen as 4 years older than they actually are. So those are the things that inform you and that made you stick up for your constituents. But then what did they say? They said that you were racist against teachers?
Yeah, so they said I was racist against teachers. Yeah, but I think, along with talking about the comment that was made, I think it's also important for us to make it very clear that a Black girl is 3 times more likely to be suspended from school than their white counterpart for the same behavior. Yeah, there are, and by mind you, Florida does not have a consistent behavior structure in how we deal with these type of things. And so when we putting forth policies that we know for a fact that will affect our communities, yeah, you can call me whatever you want to call me. But when I come back home, the constituency base, their expectation is that we're putting those agendas out on the table. And so yeah, it was referred that I was referring to teachers as being racist, which wasn't the case. But what I was referring to is that every last one of us in that chambers and all of us have some type of bias, implicit bias. And that's all we were asking for, to ensure that if you see a child who walk in your classroom who have dreads in his head, that he is no threat. He's a student. He's your student who's coming to learn. And teachers have to understand that, to ensure that if you're going to carry a gun, I need to know to make sure I check my bias at the door.
All right, and of course your amendment was voted down by the Republicans, right?
It was voted down by the Republicans, and so much so that even my Republican friends who did vote for the implicit bias training with me, they got reprimanded for doing that. And that just goes to show you what type of agenda my Republican colleagues are trying to put forth. They really are not serious about school safety. What they want to do is push forward what the NRA is asking for them to do, and what Betsy DeVos and what Trump is asking them to do. There has been no studies to show that the policy that was signed into law has actually worked.
All right, the website is shevrinjones.com. We'll have all the links down below if you want to donate or volunteer. Representative Jones now running for the Florida Senate. Thank you for joining us on the Young Turks. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.